Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to tonight's or today's free training on how virtual events are actually outperforming live events. My name is Blue Melnick, and this is my trusty partner, my wife, my business partner, my friend, my confidant. What else? Other things?
The person who laughs at all of his jokes.
Yeah, and most of the time when I'm not funny, which is probably why, we're still together. Anyway, this is Barry Baumgartner.
Hey. Ready to do this?
I am absolutely ready. And, we wanted to start by sharing something that I think is a little bit of a surprise if you're in the event space like we are. Barry and I have a company called Sage Event Management. And as the word would imply, we manage live events. And of course, right now, there's not a whole lot of live events happening. But something interesting has happened for us, and that is that we've discovered that live events are not dead. That's right. Live events are not actually dead. They are alive and well. They just look a little different. And
they're just laying on their side.
Yeah, exactly. What they look like to a certain extent is virtual. And virtual events are, to a large extent for us and our clients, are actually outperforming their live event counterparts. And there was some comments on some of the posts that we made as we were leading up to this particular training, and some people saying,
These are my favorite comments, actually. We've been reading the chat threads, and it's like, of course virtual events are outperforming live events because no one can have a live event.
Yeah.
And then the other ones were actually, this kind of hurt my heart a little bit. Some of them were like, how dare you promote virtual events for those of us who love in-person events? Like, they're coming back. They're, and of course they are. Of course they are. Like, I don't think you could find two people who love live events more than the two of us do. Like, it has literally been our bread and butter for the last 16 years, in-person events, and they are not dead, and they are coming back. Of course they are. But in the short term, virtual events are a really nice opportunity to still be able to get so many of the benefits
for sure
of an in-person event. So we're going to talk about that tonight, why it's more important than ever to embrace the fact that, yes, there's live events, and there are two kinds, in-person and virtual. And at the moment, virtual's outperforming live, not just because of COVID, but because there's so much engagement, return on engagement. We're going to talk exactly about what that looks like, and the fact that the events that we're talking about that are outperforming are compared to the exact same in-person event held a year before, 2 years before, or 3 years before. So apples to apples comparison here, and we're going to tell you exactly how tonight.
For sure. And I also want to just say welcome to everybody who's watching. There's a lot of people from all over the world. There's Regina from Austin, Texas. Hey there. Satina Cooper from the Gold Coast, Australia. Welcome. Nice to have you here. Bonnie, also from Australia. I guess you guys are probably up early? I think it's early. Catherine from Charlottesville, Virginia. Chris, also from Australia. Big Australian contingent.
Welcome.
Love that. Glad to have you with us. I saw some folks from New Jersey, David, and also, let's see, as I go up here, Jerry from Clarkston, Michigan. Clarkston, yeah, I think I'm saying that right. And Ladan from, from Northern Virginia. Glad to have you all with us. And really glad to have you here so that we can share how live events virtually are outperforming their in-person counterparts from same host, similar attendees from 6 months to a year ago. And it's an awesome thing for us who love live events. Barry and I, like she said, we absolutely love live events. We've done about 25 live events every single year for the past 16 or so years. You can do some math. That is hundreds and hundreds of live events.
Yes.
And we've generated for our clients about $450+ million from those live events. So our live events tend to be enrollment events where people teach a thing and then they invite you to continue to work with them through a continuing education course, a coaching program, a mastermind, something along those lines. So that's where we come from. That's the space that we're in. That's the type of events that we are talking about. And I'm thrilled to have all of you guys with us. And I want to say this. There is one thing that right now, pretty much every single virtual event is getting wrong. And we're going to share that with you tonight. But you have to stay all the way through till the end. So at the end of this broadcast, it's going to be about 90 minutes ballpark. And about 90 minutes in, or about 85 to 80 minutes in, we're going to transition to share with you what the one thing is that most people are getting wrong when it comes to live events. Now, when I say that, I have a question for you. And just if you don't mind, post it in the chat. When we say virtual event, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Just go ahead and type it in the chat, because I'm curious to know what it means for you. And as I say that, I know there's about a 10-second delay. I want to say hi to Patricia Dent from Barrie, Ontario. I'm from Collingwood, Ontario,
Yes.
about 45 minutes away from you. Philip says she loves that myself and my wife do this together. Philip, me too. Me too. She's
We've
having.
been able
she's,
to.
Can I
We've been able to
tell you?
quarantine
Can I tell
together.
them this?
Oh no! What are you gonna say?
Do you mind?
Probably. I probably do.
She's not happy right now. My
You're
wife
not
is
gonna
very
go
much
there.
not happy because she feels like she's having a bad hair day. And I mean, I always have a bad hair day. Like, look at this. There's nothing I can do with this. It's out of control. I've got a massive
we both
corona
have
cut.
COVID hair at
Yeah,
this point.
I've got a corona cut. That's really what's going on. It's either long and shaggy, or I just have to buzz it off because I don't know how to
Is that
shape
an
my
option?
hair.
We could buzz it off.
We could.
Maybe we could buzz both of ours off. That could be like something
maybe that will
we
be the
do.
next next broadcast. How to cut your hair online and have it be better than the offline counterpart.
Yes.
All right, so a lot of people. Let's see. Online workshop, digital presentation, Facebook event, online event, launch club, virtual training. Katie, atta girl, virtual studios. I love Dion. No limits. A lot of people saying webinar, live stream, Facebook Live again. So lots of definitely.
But even concert performance, I saw that in there. So
Yeah,
so
Zoom,
many different ways
I see
to
that.
look at this,
Streamed,
right?
Bo Beatty, sorry about that. Webinar, virtual style broadcast, online-based event, online event, webinar, free content. That's an interesting one. Much like this, hopefully you're going to get some great stuff out of it tonight. So definitely, that is really what a lot of people think of when they think of virtual events. And we'll chat a little bit about that tonight. But before we do, I want to just talk to you a little bit about who this information I think is for, or we think is for. So Barry, do you want to take that one? Who's this for from a, people like our clients' perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting in the live event space. When we work with speakers, authors, and influencers, everyone from, Dean Graziosi and Jeff Walker. We're actually here in Charlotte, North Carolina, our broadcast studio to be part of a virtual event for the next 3 days, PLF Live, Product Launch Formula Live, which is normally an in-person event, but it's going to be virtualized for the next 3 days. Lisa Sasevich, Fabian Fredrickson, Ryan Levesque, Stu McLaren. I mean, a lot of names that you have probably heard if you're in this space. But the other thing to know is that there are names that you may not know, people who do events for 5 or 50 or 500. plus the people that are doing events for 5,000 plus that are all using this very same platform of live events for positioning, for authority, for impact, for reach, for transformation, for income, for revenue. I mean, the way we think about it is a live event, whether it's virtual or in person, is a purpose-driven payday, meaning that it allows you to expand your impact and your income. We do look at it in that order, impact before income. Those two tend to go together. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Like, what does a virtual experience look like? And how do you build it so that you're serving people? And if you're doing an enrollment event, also selling them, which I think kind of leads to our next point, like primary purpose for live events and what we do.
For sure, yeah. The majority of our clients and the information we're going to share with you tonight applies specifically for people who are thinking about launching a coaching program, a mastermind, a consulting package, essentially a high ticket offer. And most of our clients, when they host their live events, are generating 7, 8 figures in 3 days. The clients that we work with on a consulting level, people who are in our course, they're doing 3-day live events and generating 6 figures, in some cases high 5 figures, and live events are hugely powerful from an enrollment perspective because you get to serve at such a high level. And like Barry said, the harder you serve, to a certain extent, the easier it is to sell, or the easier it is to enroll them in your high ticket offer. So the question is, why does all of that matter, of course? And right now, the reason why that matters is because it also works virtually. That's right. We have now tested this. We've tested this twice with our clients. I've had multiple conversations with clients who are doing it at a smaller scale, and it's working for them as well. I had one of our good friends who have an event in the fall. Fabienne Fredrickson and Derek Fredrickson texted me today because we've been chatting back and forth, and he's like, how do I do this virtual event thing? Because they had an event in Europe that was supposed to be 3 days long, and of course, no live events happening, and they still wanted to serve their audience. And he texted me today and said, oh my God, 7-figure virtual event. I haven't even told you that yet.
No, I didn't know that.
I know,
That's
right?
amazing. And we're hearing story after story after story about that. So, and the great thing is, like we were saying, whether it's 5, 50, 500, 5,000 plus, it works. And the other thing is, whether you have an amazing studio like we have here, thanks to the folks at Crescent Event Productions for helping us put this together, or whether you're doing this at home with a simple computer, it works. So, the great news is live events are not dead. They work in person, they work virtually. Much of the same strategies are the same, and it is the best time. Like, if you're thinking this is the time to be on the sidelines, we're going to share some case studies with you that prove that's not the case. We want to do that because we want to expand your thinking on what's possible before we explain to you exactly how to do it, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, and both of us really hope that by the end of this, you can see yourself hosting your first or your next live event virtually by the time you've seen some of these stories. I was browsing Facebook yesterday morning, and I saw these 2 names that popped across our Facebook feed, people who were commenting on threads that we had posted, or other videos that we had shared. One was Lori Brown, and Lori Brown said that she recently hosted her first virtual event. She sent out swag packages, she used breakout rooms. Basically, she said we're awesome. But what I love is the fact that she took the information and she implemented it fast, which is the cool thing about virtual events that you can't really replicate with live events, in-person events.
You can do this with a much shorter runway. So some of the stories we'll be sharing tonight, they put it together in a week or in 2 weeks or in 30 days. Events that normally in person might take you 3 months, 6 months, or a year are coming together literally. We're putting the event together this week in less than 2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
and we're going to have over 2,000 people.
Yep.
So it's very doable, which again is more good news.
Exactly. The other one that I saw was Jennifer Deep Stratton. Jennifer hosted her first virtual event, and she actually did as much in sales as they've done at their in-person events in the past. So again, 2 stories. I love hearing this because they don't have to be our clients. I just love hearing successful stories about virtual events because it continues to prove the model, continues to prove that what we're talking about with you, what we're sharing with you tonight, works and it works at a super high level.
Yeah, and that you can do this. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to talk exactly about how you can take this and customize it and make it your own.
Yep. So we're actually going to talk about 3 things tonight, primarily. The first one, I've got a slide that says touch, but really that should say tech. So Chris Malta is going to cut to it and then cut right back, apparently. Yeah. So my apologies. That first slide should say tech. The first thing we're going to cover tech. We're going to talk a little bit about the platform that we find that is working the best, and also talk a little bit about the gear that you may possibly need to make that happen. The other thing that we're going to talk about is touch. And touch points from an attendee's perspective, but also touch points from a host's perspective.
Which is really important.
Yeah.
I think it's easy, like, how am I going to make this work for the attendees? But what we're going to talk about tonight is if it doesn't work for you, the host, it is not going to work for the attendees. You feed off of their energy. So you really have to think about the interactivity and what's going to work not just for them, but for you.
And when it comes to live events versus virtual events, what we found is they are mostly the same.
Yeah, I'd say we've really been drilling it down, I think 80% the same. If you take an in-person event and a virtual event, again, live events, using that as a general umbrella, in-person or virtual, 80% is the same, which is great news, because if you've been doing in-person events, 80% of what you've been doing is going to translate. If you haven't and you thought you were completely blindsided, but you've been preparing for your first live in-person event, 80% of what you're going to do is going to translate. And if you're in this space of like, I think I'm going to be forced to do virtual first, but my big goal, my big dream is to take it back to in-person. Like, ideally, I'd like to be doing in-person. Good news, 80% of what you need to learn to do virtual is going to apply to in-person. The 20% that's different, we've drilled it down to tech and touch. It really does come down to tech and touch. So we're gonna share what that looks like. And then there is a third thing that we think is really critical.
Yeah, and this is probably the most critical thing when it comes to virtual events, and that is show up. Yeah. Not just getting people to sign up for your virtual event, getting them to actually show up. So we're going to share with you 4 keys to actually increase your signups, so that your signups are on average about 3 times better than they would be if you were hosting a webinar like this one.
Yes.
So, first things first, Barry Baumgartner.
Yes.
Talk to me about what this is not.
So for those of you who are entering into the chat, it's a live stream, or it's a webinar, it's a teleseminar. I think the key thing with a virtual event experience is that in order for it to be an experience, it needs to be interactive. There needs to be engagement. And while we love live stream, we've used live stream in our business for years to expand the reach of our in-person live events. The reality is they've never converted very well. And now that we're doing virtual events, I really see that the reason for that is that they're not interactive. It's fairly passive watching. A live stream in general is a passive activity. You might mention them a couple times. You might tell them to do the same exercises you're doing. You might make the same offer to them, but it's not the same as true interactivity where they're talking to each other, they're talking to you. You can see them, they can see you, they can see each other, and there's true interactivity. So the one thing we think a virtual live event experience is not is a live stream. And so basically what we have to do as an industry is redefine what is a virtual event experience. And the reality is there's so many options out there, right? So it can be confusing. It can be a little overwhelming right now.
There really are. When it comes to virtual events, you've got, and these are just a few that I've picked out. You've got Bizaboo, you've got Socio, you've got Glisser, On24, Boomset has a platform, Eventia, Wova, Sococo, Brella, VFairs, Pathable,
Verbella.
I mean, it really, the list goes on and on.
I feel like every day we get a new announcement.
I actually got another one today.
Did you?
Yeah.
What's the new one?
I got to go back, and it was somebody who said this is the next best thing. It's like Zoom in virtual reality. You have to have VR goggles in order to get there, and I was like, that's great, but who has $500 VR goggles? I know that they're not all $500, but I mean, not very many people have them, and not many people want to wear them for 3 days straight.
And it could be cool, and it all sounds sexy, right? It's like, you can go into these kind of cartoon-looking rooms, and you can pick the room you want to go into, and we've looked into a lot of them, and listen, it's not to put any of them down. They all also offer really awesome options in a world where you're trying to take things virtual. But if you're running an enrollment event where you're going to be making a high-ticket offer and you want a true return on engagement and to create a real experience, the reality is simpler is better. And we've been saying simple is sexy. And simple these days, what's really working because it's so easy for the host, for the team, and for the audience is good old
Zoom. Yep.
It's Zoom, folks.
I
It's
mean,
Zoom.
it really, what we're doing right now is actually probably more complicated than Zoom is. Zoom is an amazing platform. I saw somebody who posted a comment on the one of the posts that we had today that basically said one of the reasons why I go to live events is networking, and I can't get networking from virtual. And the reality is you can. It just has to be done right. That's what the virtual experience is all about. And that's where Zoom plays a really big role in making that happen. Because
as do the tech and touch components,
Yeah.
right? You have to put some more advanced thought into it. You know, I think no matter how hard we tried with hosts to coach them into making their live stream audiences feel included, it always fell a little short. And what's been fascinating to watch over the last 50 days, that's the thing that's amazing. This all has evolved and been created in less than 60 days, less than 2 months. I think it was March 13th. We got the first announcement that our first live in-person event of the spring was not happening. It was being canceled due to the city of Indianapolis pulling the plug based on COVID. And then they just kind of fell like dominoes after that. We canceled 8 events, postponed 8 events, renegotiated 22 events. We're now in the second round of that. I can't think of a time where the industry has been more blindsided than it is right now. 9/11, 2008, nothing quite compares to the decimation of the hospitality industry that we're seeing right now. And so that's why virtual is pretty exciting, because it isn't the death of events. In fact, it's just this gateway, it's this pathway to allow hosts and audiences to still stay involved. But a big piece of that is this interactivity and having them be able to have as close to an experience as they would in person as possible. And here's what's really cool. Some of what we're realizing works in Zoom, that we put together. And we've done 3 events in less than 60 days. We put it all together really quickly. And each one is done better than the last one. And the similarity between them is there are some cool things that we can do in Zoom world and virtual world that we can't do in person. And we're getting some rave reviews about experiences that people are having that they've never had at in-person events. So I find that really exciting because, again, we see this as an and, not an or. It's certainly a great replacement for in-person events right now. But when we emerge into an in-person world, the great thing is we're going to be able to pull from the two worlds and cross-collaborate. And I think you're going to see people doing both.
For sure. And, Zoom really works nicely from 2 perspectives. Number 1, from the audience perspective.
Yeah.
And number 2, from the host's perspective. It also ties into the technology component.
We were talking about that host perspective earlier. So tell me what makes it better for the host. A little bit. It's so hard,
actually,
I think.
do you mind if we
show them? I think that would be better.
Do you mind if we start with the attendees first?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So the first thing that really makes Zoom amazing from an attendee perspective is a feature that not a whole lot of people use, but everybody has access to, and it's breakouts.
Yes.
And when we say breakouts, we don't mean breakouts in the traditional live event model.
Like a concurrent breakout. Generally when we say breakouts, if you've been to events where they have people go into different rooms with different speakers, with different topics, with different tracks, we've traditionally called those breakouts. But what we're talking about here is actually a function within Zoom that allows you, it's called the breakout function, breakouts. But what it's really allowing you to do is send people into small rooms where they can gather 4, 6, 8, 10. And if you think about this, for you planners and hosts out there, what's really cool about a breakout room designed for 4 people, 6 people, 8 people, 10 people, whatever it might be, to interact, is that it's almost like being at a crescent round. Think about a lunchroom that you're hosting, or a crescent round set where you set half the chairs so everyone's facing the stage, no one has their back to the host. That's the kind of experience people love about an in-person event, because they get to meet the people at their table. You can have them do pair shares. You can have them go around the table and do an exercise together. It's super collaborative, which creates connection and community, which we think are really, really important parts of the live event world, especially if you're doing enrollment events. Think about a breakout room as one of those round tables. You can literally send them into a room and have them do those small scale shares. and interactive exercises, and then come back and share with the bigger group. So we are getting rave reviews from attendees who are saying they have deeper interaction and deeper shares and more collaboration in these small Zoom rooms than they ever did at in-person roundtables, which is pretty cool.
For sure. And one of the other things that is really awesome about Zoom is that gallery view, that kind of Hollywood Squares look, where all of a sudden you look up and you see 49 people if you have your settings turned on that way, and you get to see and interact with people in a way that you couldn't before. We did a small meeting for what was it, about 100 people last night for a trade association, and they did a cocktail reception that had
Cocktails and conversation.
Cocktails and conversation.
And then this was a replacement for an event that this group has done. I mean, we've been involved for 20 years with this event. I think it's 25 years old. Every spring, the same group of entrepreneurs get together to share and collaborate and network. They've known each other for years, and they mourned not having that in-person event. I mean, it's something that they all look forward to. We look forward to every year. And so we're like, what could we do? We introduced a 5-part cocktails and conversation series so that from the comfort of their home, we sent them a glass in advance and some notes on how it works, but we had a guest speaker, we had casual conversation, reception talk, and we sent them into breakouts with questions to get started on the networking and the interactivity. That then led to organic conversation and deep shares. They had that 30 minutes together, and then we brought them back out, had some more casual conversation, and we were done for the night. So they could all do that from the comfort of their own home. It was so much better, hashtag alone together. It was so much better to be able to maintain your proper safety protocols, but not have to sacrifice getting together with your peers at a time where sharing information in the industry is more important than it's ever been. So love breakouts, and gallery view, pretty cool, because gallery view allowed them to actually see each other, and the kind of ribbing and, like fun-loving ribbing and that kind of thing that were going on, because, it's kind of fun to see each other in your home environments, and it opens up a new level of intimacy, I think.
I think so, for sure.
Can they see what we're seeing here? Is
Not
it
yet.
possible?
Okay. They're going to see it in just a moment.
Great.
But one thing to be really clear on as we chat about this is when we talk about Zoom, we're actually not talking about Zoom webinar. We're talking about Zoom meeting. And Zoom meeting is the standard, or the platform that you're probably used to seeing when you interact in small groups. Zoom webinar is very much kind of fly on the wall experience, where I'm kind of like this is, to be frank, where we're talking at you out to a camera, and there's not a whole lot of interactivity. We can still interact in the chat, which is awesome, but beyond that, it is a little bit, one way. It's a one-way experience, unfortunately. So with Zoom meeting, the process or the interactivity really is a lot better. In the end, you can really see and hear everyone. Now, from that perspective, let's actually talk about what you've been saying, which is, what does this look like at scale? So I want to share with you I want you to think of this as inspiration, not necessarily as exactly what you should do, because the reality is what we have here at our disposal, because we do live events, because we've partnered with an audiovisual provider that between the two of us, we don't have a lot of live events going on. So we're being creative in how we create these virtual experiences for our hosts, which is the perspective we're going to talk about now. I'm going to show you what's possible. So we have another camera here. And hey there, how's it going, everyone? And as you can see here, I'm on a stage. I'm on a real stage, and in front of me, I have a whole bunch of televisions. And the way we set this up was so that when we were on stage, or when the host is on stage, they can actually look out and see different people, see different names. As they're walking up here, they can see, hey, Joel Montgomery, you've walked away from your computer. Or Deidre O'Rourke, how's it going over there? Now, just so you guys know, I know you're not in Zoom right now. These are just loops from some of our events that actually took place. But it gives you a sense of what it's like to stand here and actually eyeball. And as you walk across, you can continue to see more people all the way across. So we have multiple cameras, and as the host walks across the stage, just as they would in a live event environment, they can see different members of the audience. because each of these televisions is a different Zoom room. So we're using a lot of technology to make all this happen. And then actually behind us, we have a big screen. And you can put different things up on that screen. So if you had a guest speaker, as an example, we could bring a guest speaker up on this screen. Again, this is a pre-record of a guest speaker that spoke at the last event that we had. That's actually Dean Graziosi. If we didn't want to go with the guest speaker back there, but we wanted to maybe bring on a panel, or if we wanted to see all of our attendees and have it be even bigger, we could put a big quadrant view up where all of a sudden now I'm standing in front of the audience rather than looking out at them. So lots of different things that you can do from a technology perspective. But like I said, in the end, it doesn't have to be all of that technology. That technology is awesome, but you can do this with a computer and a television. And let me explain what I mean by that. You don't need to have all of these computers. You just need one. You have a camera in your computer. And to get a similar experience to what we have in front of us, you all probably have a television in your house somewhere, a big screen TV. I know, we have one in our house. We only have one television. But in the end, you probably have a 50, maybe a 55, maybe you have a 40-inch television. All you need to do is get an HDMI cable, load up Zoom, and watch things happen. Watch the magic happen. Because on your television, you can put your grid view, and on your computer, again, using stuff you already have, except maybe an extra HDMI cable. Maybe you got to go out and spend $4 or $5 on an HDMI cable, but you can create a similar experience where you can stand up, elevate your laptop, and start talking with your audience. And if you have up to 300-400 people, you can still use Zoom, and it doesn't take any more bandwidth. You can do this from your house, which is really cool. So from there, you can take it one step further if you wanted to, and add an external camera to Zoom. If you wanted to go one step further than that, you can add a microphone to Zoom. But the reality is, computers these days have great cameras in them and pretty decent microphones. It does continue to get better the more things you add, but I just want to say you don't have to have what we have at our disposal here.
Yeah, I think some of our client success stories, Derek and Fabienne with their $1 million payday, they did that with a fairly simple tech setup. And we have a client who did it from his own home with, I think, a laptop and an iPad, and had a similar, multi-seven-figure result. So, whether you're aiming for, small, medium, large event or a small, medium, large payday, the great news is you don't have to invest a ton in tech. It's highly scalable, which is great news for keeping this simple and keeping your liability low so you can keep your profitability high. And that actually leads to a great results conversation, just sharing 2 case studies with you so that you can see what's possible. For those of you who were asking, how does this translate from a virtual to an in-person, and what's the actual scale method, you're about to learn.
Right. So first example I'm going to share with you is an event from 2019 that had 300 attendees. And when the client decided, okay, live event isn't happening, well, really, circumstances decided for the client,
right,
live event isn't happening, we decided to go virtual, and we had 1,200 people registered. We had 1,023 actually go through a check-in process, which is part of the strategies we're going to share in our third segment on Show Up. And we had 700 to 900 people in attendance, which are amazing numbers, right? When you think about that, 1,000 checked in, 700 to 900 people in attendance, that is between 70 and 90% show up. Typically for a webinar,
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And this was for 3 full days. So day 1, day 2, day 3, you're seeing that same consistent show up, which is really important. I mean, it's easy. We talked about this isn't a webinar. This isn't a live stream. It's easy to think of this as just a 3-day webinar, but to keep it interactive and keep people with you, these are the kinds of results you can get. So we'll talk about how you do the interactivity, but for now, just focus on the fact that this is possible. I actually think some of those metrics are better than some in-person events.
for sure. And from a results perspective, In 2019, they generated $600,000 approximately. These are round numbers. And in 2020, they generated $720,000. That's a 20% increase in revenue, but what's really more important than that is they actually had much higher profit because their costs were much lower.
Right.
It's all about the net, folks.
Yeah, it is about the net. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know, listen, we all love our marketer math. We like to talk about the gross numbers, the number of people who checked in, the number of people who registered, the number of people who bought. But at the end of the day, it's what you're netting. So if you can increase the gross and reduce the expenses, your net is significantly higher, which ultimately makes you a much more profitable company with a much more profitable event. And remember too, for those of you focused on service, I think that's really important. You know, we at Sage always say sales is service. You want to serve people before you sell them. You know, that stick means that there's more people who are hearing your message. There's more people who are getting the information to go home and implement. There's more people who are impacted and transformed. And for every dollar spent is someone who's investing in themselves to get the additional help and support to work with you over the course of the year so that they have an even better transformation, which is really important work, especially at a time like this. And it worked at scale. We 3x that event, right?
Yeah.
So the next story we're going to tell you is someone who had significantly more attendance and had similar results.
Exactly.
Let's take a look.
So 600 attendees in 2019. And this year, when they decided to go virtual, they had 3,000 people registered. They had 2,800 people check in. So again, very, very good check-in. And then from there, between 2,200 and 2,400 people in attendance over the course of those 3 days. And from there, results in 2019, about $2.4 million. In 2020, 2.5 times that, which is absolutely awesome. And that comes back to what we were saying from the get-go, which is that live events aren't dead. They're alive and well and, you know, doing just fine, which is pretty awesome.
I think having over a $6 million payday in 3 days with a virtual event with a significantly lower overhead, less team travel, no food and beverage minimums, no hotel contracts, no room liability. You start to add that up, less liability, less overhead, less risk. All of that bodes really well, whether you're having a large event or a small event. So again, it scales really easily, but hopefully you're inspired to see exactly what's possible with these numbers. Now we're going to talk a little bit about
biggest challenge. So let's actually first just back up for a second. And we said that we were going to cover 3 things tonight: tech and touch. So tech, we're talking as simple as you can get, all the way to as complicated as you want, right? So it can be as simple as a laptop, a television, and Zoom. That's your platform. Zoom provides the touch that gives you the same kind of touch points that you get from a live event experience, from networking to sponsors to interactivity and interactive exercises, the ability to see each other, because right now you guys are in the chat and you're chatting back and forth, so you can kind of see each other, but it is completely different when all of a sudden you spend 3 days with each other and you really see them, you get to know them, you get to look into their eyes the same way you do at a live event, which is pretty exciting. Do I say if I do say so myself? I think people who say if I do say so myself, it's like something that you have done. I did not create Zoom, obviously. But if I do say so myself, I think it's pretty cool how we're using it. How about that?
Yeah, I think not many people have figured out how to scale it this way. And that's, you know, one of the big success stories is knowing that you don't have to keep it in small numbers. For those of you that were hosting events for thousands, that's still very doable, even through the Zoom portal.
For sure.
So how do we get people to show up?
Yeah, let's actually talk about that, because in the end, if you're making a high ticket offer from your live event, the reality is you need people to actually show up. And you need to get the kinds of numbers that we're talking about in order to get the kind of results that we're talking about, meaning 70, 80, 90% show up rate from your signups for your live event. So the first thing, and we decided this really early on with our first client and have continued it through our first 4 live events, is no recordings. Right. So unlike a webinar, unlike this webinar where we will probably send out a recording either later tonight or tomorrow morning, we don't offer recordings for live events, because much like a live event or virtual events, much like a live event, if you don't go into the ballroom, you don't get to see the content.
Like if you stayed up in your hotel room and missed the first session, you don't come down to the team and say, I missed that. Can you give me a replay right away so I can catch up? There's kind of a common understanding that if you missed it, you missed it. And the goal with doing a virtual event is that it doesn't become missable, right? Like you want people to feel compelled to stay. With the 3-day event, we're trying to stack content and take people on a journey so that they're getting real transformation and impact with the things that you're teaching. It's hard to do if they're in and out and in and out. So if they're treating it as an extended webinar and kind of popping in and out for different sessions, they're not going to have the same experience as if they stay with you for the full 3 days. By not having recordings, they're more compelled to stick with you. To miss a little is to miss a lot. So the more they're with you, the more they get that flow of content, the more likely they have aha moments and information that they want to act on when they get home. So no recordings led to better stick and higher engagement.
Exactly. The next thing is something that some of you may have a little resistance to, but it is probably the biggest of the 3 things in terms of getting them to show up. Not necessarily getting them to stay, but getting them to actually show up. And that is something that we are calling the swag box.
Yes.
So, Barry,
Presents.
what? Prezzies.
Yeah, we like prezzies. I mean, the swag box, you might be thinking, okay, virtual event is no cost or low cost, and so now I'm incurring cost to actually send out physical product. What we've been doing is essentially charging a fee that at a bare minimum is going to cover your swag box and the shipping. You can certainly charge more than that. We're seeing ticket prices from $997 to $2,000 and $3,000, so it is certainly doable. But at a bare minimum, cover your swag and send a really intentional swag box, gifts from you. And not just any gifts, things that they're going to keep, things that they're going to use. At Sage, we often say form follows function, meaning that you really want to think about the 3-day event and what are the kinds of exercises you're going to do? What are the kinds of things they might need? Whether it's a water bottle to stay hydrated while they're at home with you, a workbook, a journal to take notes, stick-it notes that they might need, highlighters. I mean, what are they going to need to do the exercises that you want them to do? And really be intentional about what you put in that box. Now, here's the thing too, much like the tech, you can go super simple or more complicated. You can keep it really affordable or you can go all out. I think, I'd rather have one really great piece of swag than 10 pieces that are likely to end up in the trash can.
Yeah.
So you want to really think about that. But why we think swag works is you don't get swag when you sign up for a webinar. Right? So it's another way to differentiate your virtual event experience from a live stream, a webinar, a telesummit.
Well, and when it comes down to it, we all know that email open rates, if you guys send out emails to market yourself or to market your business, email open rates, if you have a good email open rate, it's like 20%, right? On average, they're probably a little bit lower. If you have a big list, they're way lower than that. But there is no doubt that a FedEx person knocking on your door the day before the event takes place and handing you a box
of presents that you didn't expect.
Exactly. It is essentially the best email reminder you could possibly send, because now all of a sudden I get the box in the mail. I'm like, oh yeah, I have that event this weekend.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
that. And if they've invested this much, imagine what the 3-day event is going to look like. Imagine what the in-person event's going to be like. So there's some reciprocity, like you've given to me. I want to show up and kind of honor that.
Yep.
And again, it's showing up differently, which makes them more interested to see what the rest of the virtual experience is going to be. So love a swag box.
It's awesome. The third thing is actually something that a lot of attendees for the event that we're doing this weekend, Product Launch Formula Live with Jeff Walker, are actually going through right now. And I got a comment on the Facebook broadcast from Dave Gambrill, who said, did the check-in for PLF yesterday, the Zoom setup and gamification points were awesome. So we're going to talk about the second point in a second, but the check-in process, the event starts tomorrow. Dave has already gone through an in-person check-in. And what do we mean by that? Well, 2 days before the live event, and it doesn't have to be 2 days, but because we have a good amount of people signed up.
Could be a half day or a day. Again, you want to scale these ideas to the appropriate size for your event. But PLF Live is around 2,000 attendees, and so we gave them 2 days to actually check in. Why would we have people check in for a virtual event? I mean, they could just click the link and show up tomorrow morning, but there's something to having them show up early, having them meet in person, meet a member of our team who's going to check them in. So it is in a Zoom room. They're talking to them one-to-one or one-to-many if a few people show up at the same time. And they're making sure that we get all the hassles out of the way. Do you know how to mute and unmute? Do you know how to raise your hand? Do you have your camera on? Do you know how to put your camera on? You know, all those things are really critical pieces of the tech component. They want to make sure don't become a stumbling block for people where either they're overwhelmed or nervous about it, or we spend the first half hour of the virtual event deconstructing all the tech and helping people with a ton of tech issues. Every time we've done this, it's led to an on-time start with excited, happy people with no tech issues, which is super helpful. Well, that was really why we started it, but why are we keeping it? What else works so well about it?
Well, the thing, other than being able to start on time with no tech issues, because everybody's already been in a Zoom meeting in the 2 days prior, but also you create an instant in-person connection, right? So part of the tech check process is to actually speak to a person. And now you've done two things that are completely different than any other live or virtual event that people have signed up for in the past, right? Most webinars, even this one, you signed up for it on a form and then we sent you an email reminder, right? But if all of a sudden you get a box in the mail and then before the event takes place, you talk to somebody who walks you through what the event is going to be like, what the experience is going to be like, and this happened for everyone. You've now completely differentiated yourself, and before the event even starts, people are thinking to themselves, this is a different event. I have to show up for this. This is going to be cool. And not only that, they see me, I have to show up. Not just be present, but actually show up. So I think that's the reason we're going to keep doing it. The reason we started doing it was the reason Barry talked about, which was how do we start on time and avoid technology problems. But the reason we're going to keep doing it is because of the in-person thing.
Yeah, and I think enhanced connection and connectivity really do pay off, again, in engagement and also in enrollments. If you think about it, the team who's going to check them in advance is the same team that's going to support them throughout the course of the week at help desk and if an offer is made at the virtual back of room. So you want them to be comfortable with your team. You want them to meet your team. You want them to start to build a relationship with your team and have a sense that they're available to be there and support them. So it pays off big dividends. And if you think about it, you wouldn't allow someone to walk into your ballroom without, your in-person ballroom without going through registration and getting their badge. Why would you let them walk into your virtual ballroom without doing that? So, think about what is, whenever you're going from in-person to virtual, part of, just a little tip is thinking about what you love in your in-person event. Thinking about how you can virtualize it. And the good news is virtualizing registration really works and pays off, not only in more people showing up in advance and being ready, but sticking with you over the course of the whole event.
Yeah, for sure. So some great things to be thinking about. Let's talk about the fourth thing and this one is less about getting them to show up, but getting them to actually stick with you over the course of those 3 days. And I was calling it gamification early on, but recently somebody who is actually coming to our live event, Julie Hemrick. I think I finally got it right? Helmrich.
Love you, Julie. But she suggested, instead of gamification, what about funifying it, looking at it as funification? And I love that so much more, because the one concern I've always had about gamification is gaming someone, to me, feels like you're kind of doing something to them instead of something for them. Just has this kind of, I don't know, I've never loved it.
I've never resonated with the word.
Yeah, never resonated with the word gamification. But the minute we thought of it as funification, now that I resonate with. How can you make the event more fun for your attendees and keep them engaged from the very first minute that they hit your dashboard? So let's talk about that.
So yeah, let's talk about what that means. For us, funification is simply put, rewarding your attendees for actions you want them to take.
Yeah,
so,
it's that simple. What do you want them to do? Show up and check in. What do you want them to do? Complete the registration process. What do you want them to do? Show up when the doors open. Show up for the first session. Be back from lunch on time. Contribute. Post pictures on social media. Like, you start to make a list of all the things you really want the attendees to do, and then take a look at how you can reward them with points, and have those points actually count towards some big rewards at the end of the event or along the way. We'd like to give them gifts the whole way through.
For sure. And you may have heard Barry say points. We use for our virtual events, when we do them, we build out a very simple website, and we are event planners first, web designers like 15th. So they really are simple websites built on top of WordPress. And with that, we use a WordPress plugin to actually track actions that are taken on the website. So when somebody logs in, they get a point. When somebody clicks on the link to go into the Zoom room, they get some points. When somebody books a coaching zone, they get points. When they go check out sponsors and interact with them in some way, they get points. And these are all actions that we want them to take, but then the flip side to that is the moment we take the stage, we actually start using those points, right? So who's the person in first place right now? Congratulations, we are going to send you this thing.
Sweatshirt, this
yes.
mug,
or
this
a t-shirt, right?
This
is
$100 gift card.
Exactly, whatever the case may be. And you start actually using the points, and then if you really want to go one step further, you say to them over the course of the event, the top couple hundred people or 300 people or whatever the number is, or top 30, are going to get a special thing. Now, that's how we do it, but it doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be super high tech, right? You don't have to have a website. You don't have to, deal with plugins and all of that jazz. It can be as simple as setting up a free Facebook group and rewarding people when they take actions you want them to take, like post a photo in the Facebook group of where you are this week.
Post an aha moment. Post exercise, like or answer from an exercise. I mean, again, I think the key here is scale it for where you are. If it's just you or you have a small team, you're going to keep that fairly simple. If you have a larger team, you can get more complex with that. And again, think about how would you like to be rewarded? You know your avatar, what we call right fit client. How would your right fit client want to be rewarded, and what are the actions you want to reward them for? It actually becomes fairly simple, and we've been surprised by how engaged people are. Like the return on engagement is huge. From the very first moment they logged in and started registering and noticed they got points, they're then posting in the Facebook group and telling others, hey, you have to go register, check out the points rewards, check out the leaderboard. The best thing, because we're talking about stick and show up, is that it doesn't just help keep them engaged on day one. It keeps them engaged on day 2 and day 3 and staying till the very end to find out who those final leaderboard winners are for the prizes you're going to give away. And then a quick little tip for those of you thinking about it, have some really awesome, juicy prizes that you're giving away that are things that you don't sell, that don't cost you anything other than your time. So the grand prize could be a 1-hour consultation with you. Maybe you don't sell things, but sell your consultation by the hour, or a special service that might be a highlight of your program, but not something that you typically sell a la carte. You can offer that to the top 1, top 5, top 10, really be intentional with that. Not only does it help you seed your programs as you announce what those are and talk about the things you're really good at, but it gets people super excited about competing for those prizes, which gets them committed not only to participate in the gamification or funification, but to stay to the very end. Yep. It's a win all around.
It totally is. And listen, all of these things are designed around helping you to create connection and community from your live events, because in the end, the reality is people come to live events for 3 main reasons, right? They come for content, number 1.
Yes.
They come for connection, number 2, and they come for community, number 3. And virtually, number 1 is easy, right? Everybody's got.
It should be. I mean, you know you're good at your content, so you can deliver that content in person, you can deliver it virtually. That's not going to be your biggest issue in transitioning from in-person to virtual. But the thing you really have to be concerned about is how do I keep them connected and how do I build a sense of community? Because at the end of the day, that really does keep them raving about your event, feeling like they want more, which ultimately leads to higher enrollments, and delivering something that nobody else can do, because your community is unique. It's your community of like-minded people that they're seeking out. Yeah. Let's give an example of this on a small scale, because we've been giving a lot of examples that are in the millions. And if you're just starting out doing your first virtual or in-person event, or you're hosting your next one, you may be thinking this is all too big and too grand for you. So I want to bring it down and show you a really great example of one of our students and what they've done.
Yeah. So Kelly Schaefer is in a course that we have called Rush, which is a course designed to teach people how to host live events, successful live events. And Kelly went through the course about 6 months ago. She had an event planned for April, and that event, of course, got postponed, like every single other event in April and May and possibly June got postponed. Well, we spoke to her mid-April, and we said, listen, you had almost 30 people who had registered for your live event. Why don't you do a virtual event? Why don't you and she didn't want to do a 3-day, so she decided, I'm just going to do a 1-day virtual event. So I said, use the structure, put together a simple virtual event, use Zoom, go low tech, computer, television, just like what we were talking about earlier tonight. And she wound up having 28 attendees at her live event. She made a high ticket offer of $2,000, and she got 6 new students that generated $12,000 plus from her live event, from her 1-day live event that she decided to do and planned and executed in 10 days.
Yeah, so in less than 2 weeks, she put it together start to finish, made $12,000 in 1 day, and now she has a model that she can wash, rinse, repeat, and do it over and over again and continue to build on that success. So, it's very doable at any scale, 1 day or 3-day, small audience, medium audience, large audience. And again, all it takes is a computer and a TV to get you started. So very scalable and easy to start from wherever you are right now.
And I think, for you, I would, given some of these stories, given, the 2 stories that are, really big, but also also Kelly's, where in a short period of time, she generated $12,000 for
while
her
serving
business.
her audience too, by the way. Her audience is really seeing shortcomings in their industry and really struggling in how to overcome some of the restrictions from COVID. So they're looking to Kelly now more than ever for leadership, for content, for connection, for community. So it was a great service that she offered, allowing them to connect. The thing is, it's not just about sales, it's about service. We always say it's impact before income. So while, a purpose-driven payday, for many of you, you're using a live event or a virtual event to make money for your business, to launch your next coaching program or service. I know for all of you, you're really interested too in legacy and impact and transformation and getting your work out into the world. And the great news about a great event, a live event, whether it's in person or virtual, again, this is part of the 80% that is the same. In live event world, for both of these models and platforms, what's really amazing is the number of people that you can serve. Whether they buy or not, if they're getting incredible connection, incredible content, incredible community access to a community of like-minded people, there's a huge service that you're providing. The fact that virtually you can expand your reach literally globally just makes it all that much better. You literally can access people that you never would have gotten to before. They don't have to get on a plane. They don't have to incur expenses. They don't have to leave the kids behind. They just have to step aside into the next room and turn their computer on, and they have you right there at their fingertips.
And, with that, I think it's important to kind of take a second, sit back, and imagine what you could do with this.
Yes.
Right? Because with what we're sharing, if you decide to do a live event today, that means that within the next couple of weeks, you could have 20 people, 25 people, 30 people like Kelly did, and generate $12,000 in your business. And I don't know about you, but even for us, $12,000 is a big deal. It's it's definitely impact for our business, and I'm sure it would be for yours as well. So what could you do if you had all the tools at your disposal to put on a virtual live event? And listen, we had 90 minutes to go through a good amount of content with you tonight. And I know, incidentally, you have some questions. We're going to get to some of those. And I also promised that we would share with you the one thing that pretty much everybody is getting wrong when it comes to virtual events, so that you don't make the same mistake yourself. But before we do, we would like to invite you to a live event that we are actually hosting May 29th through the 31st. It is an event that we have very, very intelligently, I think.
It's so clever.
It is very
clever. The name for our event is very clever.
It is. It is. Are you ready? Are you sitting down? I hope so. It is the virtual event on virtual events.
Not just any event, the virtual event on virtual events.
Exactly.
In all seriousness, we really believe in just calling it what it is. And I think it's safe to say that we're doing things in this space that a lot of people have not yet figured out and getting results that a lot of people are not getting. And so we're getting inundated with questions from people saying exactly what platform you're using and how are you doing it and how does gamification work and how do you structure the point rewards and, et cetera, et cetera. And so, doing this for the last 60 days and doing everything we can through free webinars and live casts and taking phone calls and supporting the industry. A number of people in our mastermind group suggested, why don't you just do a virtual event on virtual events? Like, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And let's do it quickly so that we can get the information out there so that you can immediately start actualizing these ideas and making them your own. So it's like in 2 weeks, it's happening.
Exactly. We decided to take our own medicine. We decided to do this in a relatively short period of time to get this information out there quickly. So over the course of the 3 days, each day has a very specific theme. Day one, we're going to talk about strategy or strategize.
Yeah, and we're a strategy first company. We lead that with all of our clients, meaning that we really believe the best way to plan a live event is putting the strategy first. So first and foremost, what is the end result you're trying to achieve, whether it's enrollment or fulfillment or something else? What's the goal that you're trying to achieve with your live event, your virtual live event? And then let's reverse engineer it to deliver that result. So you want to put the strategy first. So day one is all about the strategy so that everything's in alignment. And trust me on this, when you do that first, our clients are always amazed. The rest of the decision making is so much easier because you're super clear on the end goal. By the way, that's part of the 80% that you can apply to in-person or virtual live events. And then day two is about virtualizing.
Yeah. And on day two, we're going to talk about, we're definitely going to talk about how you can, first off, fill the event, because I think that's very, very important. And yeah, of course it's important.
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
one of the
marketing's a
biggest
big part of
questions.
it.
I mean, everyone's always concerned. It doesn't change in a virtual event. How are you going to fill butts and seats? How are you going to get people registered for the event? So we're going to talk about that along with revenue generation. Now that you're clear on your strategy and what you want to do for the event, the second thing you really want to focus on is how do you virtualize it? That's part of the tech, that's part of the touch. How do you make that real? But also, how do you pay for it? So we're going to be talking about filling your event and also how to pay for your event. And again, surprisingly easy strategies that are easily scalable. So whether you're doing events for 5, 50, 500, or 5,000 or more, the same exact strategies work.
Yeah, and I want to take a second and thank Carolyn. Carolyn's in the chat and just has said that she finds this information very helpful. Carolyn, thank you for sharing that. It means a lot. That is obviously the point of this, is to share. And whether you decide to join us May 29th through the 31st for the virtual event on virtual events or not, I hope that you got something that could inspire you to think about virtual events as an option
like
for you.
Diane and Jennifer, I think they just listened to the same exact, very similar information we shared and took it out and did it on their own. If that's all you do, great, yay you.
Yeah.
Like that's the most important thing, is to make sure you're served. But if you want more information, there's only so much you can do in 90 minutes. So if you're looking for a deeper dive into these very same concepts, the virtual event on virtual events is the place to go.
Yep.
And day three wouldn't be right without
Actualize.
So strategize, virtualize, actualize. And the way I think of actualize is taking ideas and putting them into action.
Yep.
I always am so disappointed when an attendee takes all the time out of their schedule to be an event for 3 days and then goes home, doesn't do anything with it. You don't want it to be shelf help, where it's like sitting on the shelf. We want it to be actionable information that you can put into practice right away. Because again, think about this. You could do it in a week, like Kelly. You could do it in 2 weeks, like Jeff Walker. You could do it in 3 weeks, like Dylan Frost. You could do it in 30 days, like Pete Vargas. All of those are case studies from the last 45 days. Like those have all happened in the last 45 days. Millions of dollars generated. Lots of people served, like thousands of people served because people took action. So day three is all about how to take the stuff you learned and put it into an easy program at a glance, which is where your content finds a home so it can deliver that end result that you're looking for. How to do the team, how to do the production timeline, how much labor do you need, what are the roles, what are the responsibilities, how much time do you need to pull it together, and what are the simple steps you need to make it happen. And again, we're going to talk about the simplest version of that, doing a 1 day, all the way to, kind of the accordion pleat to our preferred model, which is the 3-day live or virtual event. Again, much of this information, like the PAG design, if in-person events come back, yay you. A lot of it is still applicable. About 80% of it you could still use to apply to your in-person event.
Exactly. And, with all of that, you're probably wondering, okay, that's awesome, sounds great, at least I hope you're thinking that. How much does this cost, right? And we sat down, Barry mentioned that we spoke to some folks in our mastermind, and they said, you absolutely have to do this. And those same people, we said, okay, how much should we charge? And they said, well, to be frank, we would pay to have our team go and learn how to do this for us, and we'd pay you $5,000 to $10,000 to do this. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty awesome. And if nothing else, it definitely gave us the encouragement to actually decide to move forward with this, decide to host the virtual event on virtual event, May 29th through the 31st. And, but in addition to the virtual event on virtual event, we thought that there, again, in 3 days, there's only so much you can do. So we wanted to give you a couple of extra tools that will help you to go forward faster. And one of them, a lot of our clients do what we call coaching zones or strategy sessions at their live events. And it's an amazing way to serve your audience at a higher level because they get to have more of their questions asked, engage them, and create additional community and connection with those audience members. And there's
whether you've seen this or heard about it, or you're just now thinking, oh, what a great idea. The top questions that we typically get about a coaching zone are, what kind of space do I need? How do I structure it? How many team do I need? What do enrollment conversations look like? What do engagement conversations look like? How do I reward the team? How do we structure check-in? How do we book appointments? How do we do follow-up? How do we confirm roles and responsibilities? How do we train the team on the scripting? All of those things come into play to make this work well. And here's the great thing about a coaching zone. The thing that it most does is engage your audience and make them want more. They get to know your team on a deeper level. So now it's not just about you, it's about this incredible team you have. So strategy sessions and coaching zones can be really great ways to extend the touch in person or virtually at your live event so that attendees feel better served. And at the end of the day, it's all about service. Our Coaching Zone mini course does exactly that. And we typically sell it for $997, but we're actually giving it as a bonus if you get your ticket here today.
Exactly. So that's bonus number 1, the Coaching Zone, which has a $997 value. Bonus number 2, so over the course of the last 16 years, Barry has really become an expert when it comes to interacting with attendees at the back of the room, because having done hundreds of events over the course of the last 16 years and generating over $450 million in revenue for our clients, you have a lot of conversations, a lot of enrollment conversations, a lot of just what if types of conversations.
Yeah. And you want to serve people. I mean, the heart of this, if you're dealing with overcoming objections, whether you're the host doing it from the stage or your team at the back of the room, whether you have a team of 1 or 10 or 100, overcoming objections can be one of the hardest things. A team often get frustrated or even a little nervous about how to answer those questions. But it's so much easier when you approach it from a service-based perspective. At the end of the day, you as the host are trying to serve the attendees by giving them incredibly good content. And your team ought to be serving the attendees by helping them think through whether the program is actually right for them or not. We know that the best and most common questions that we get are time, money, spouse, fear, shame, and self-doubt. I'm going to go through those again. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what niche you serve, what language this is. We've tested it in different countries, whether it's a low ticket or a high ticket offer. Generally, when people are making an enrollment decision about whether or not to buy a course or a workshop or a coaching program or a mastermind, they're starting to debate, do I have the time to do it? Can I afford to do it? Can I get my spouse or my business partner on board to do it? I'm scared to do it because this is something brand new for me. So can I get over the fear of this? And then the last one, and the one that people are least likely to talk about, is I'm a little ashamed and I have some self-doubt on whether I can do it. I'm either feeling that because I've invested before and it didn't work out, I made a bad choice, and so now I feel a little wary, or I invested before and I didn't do the work, and I don't want to admit it, but I'm kind of a procrastinator, and I've invested in things before and not shown up. And those are tough challenges to overcome. But when you face it from a perspective of service, how do I serve you in making this decision? It's easier for the team, and it's a real benefit for the attendee. And here's the thing to know. If you don't learn anything else tonight, this is super important. If they're not enrolled in themselves, they're not going to enroll in you. Like, if they don't believe they can do it, why are they going to pay you to help them do it? And the other thing is that this is a long game. You're not trying to sell the whole room. You're trying to sell the people who need more work, who need more support, who need more hand-holding. Those people are the ones who are trying to buy, and those you want to help. Everyone else, you want to deliver as good a content as you possibly can so that they're still served. But the long game is today's non-buyer is tomorrow's buyer. So if you take really good care of them at the back table, they're going to leave a raving fan, they're going to spread the word, and you'll be shocked by the number of people who come back the next year and say, I was so well taken care of. I came here with the desire to enroll this year. Like, this is my plan. Like, I came here just so I could do this. So our Overcoming Objections mini course is a great way to learn how you and your team can overcome objections in a sales and service way. And we normally sell this for $19.97, but we think it's such an important life skill for you to have. If you're going to be in the live event space, you really need this. There's only so much we can teach in the 3 days, so we're going to gift it to you as a bonus if you buy your ticket today.
Exactly. So with that, between what our clients have said or what our mastermind has said we should be charging for this, plus the 2 bonuses, you have, well over $8,000 in total
Which
value.
seems like not a bad deal. I mean, for a lot of our offers, a lot of our clients, the offers they make are in the $6,000 to $15,000 range. So if you think about it, if you have a virtual event, you make one sale, or you get, a couple sponsorships, or you get some tickets sold, you've probably paid at least $8,000 or made at least $8,000, which would absolutely pay for this. But the good news is we wanted to make it a no-brainer for you to say yes. So it's not $8,000. It's just
$997.
Nah.
No?
We decided we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yep, we really wanted it to make a total no-brainer for you. And I promise you, you will not continue to see this fee. This price is absolutely going up on Friday. We've been debating this internally but during quarantine. So if you register today, it's only $97, and it includes both of those bonuses. So $97 gets you the 3-day virtual event on virtual events, teaching you everything you need to know to run your own live event, and it gets you those 2 bonuses, how to run a coaching zone and how to overcome objections. And yes, it is only $97. Between you and me, the $97 covers the cost of, you guessed it, the swag box. Otherwise, I would give it to you for free. But I've got some pretty awesome swag, and I doubled my budget. I got a $47 budget from my husband, but I spent $97. So anyway, your $97 covers your swag box and everything else I gave you. So we hope you'll join us. It's going to be an amazing 3 days.
Exactly. So it's pretty easy to get to register. Just go to pbsage.com or what I call peanutbuttersage.com. Barry says it's powered by Sage.
Powered by Sage, PB, powered by.
pbsage.com/TVE for the virtual event.
Yeah. So I think it's up on your screen so you can see it, but pbsage.com/TVE. Just $97 gets you your ticket, your swag box, 3 days with us, and 2 bonuses. And here's the thing. If you join us May 29th through the 31st, which is only a couple weeks away, and take all of this in and actually apply it, strategize, virtualize, and actualize, you too could be hosting your own virtual event in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a month after. So literally by the end of June, there's no reason why you couldn't have actualized this into your very own virtual event, serving people and giving impact before income. It's absolutely what we're going to be teaching, is how that sales as service model works, so that you don't feel icky, you don't feel like you're arm twisting. You're doing an amazing job serving your audience, giving them incredibly good content, connection, community, and then for those who want more for you, making a super easy invitation to your high ticket offer. The great news is the structure that we're going to teach you actually does the selling for you. So if you are looking at using this for an enrollment event, we're going to make it easier for you than ever before to see exactly how you can do it. Very same strategies that we use with our clients.
Yeah, so I hope you join us. And once again, just go to pbsage.com/TVE. A couple of people asking some questions, and we do have about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to open the floor a little bit to Q&A.
Yeah, this is like Ask Us Anything. You
exactly.
can post those questions in the chat. We're going to get to those. But before we do, I think we promised one thing before the end of the broadcast.
We did, and that is that what is it that most people are getting wrong when it comes to live event or virtual events? And here's the thing. Much like a lot of you said when I asked the question at the beginning of the stream, which was, what do you think of when you think virtual events? The reality is a lot of you said webinar. And that's true for most people. We've asked that question a lot over the course of the last
We've asked it live,
3-4
we've
weeks.
asked it online, we've asked our mastermind groups, we've asked some of our Facebook friends, and over again, people default to webinar.
Yep.
And so what is really a challenge is if you see it as a 3-day webinar or your audience sees it as a 3-day webinar. I want to say it's virtually impossible, no pun intended, to be doing a 3-day webinar. This works well for 90 minutes. We can sit here and, sort of chat with you. Again, we're watching the chat as we talk to you. But to maintain our energy and yours for 3 days sitting behind this desk would be really challenging. And again, the name of the game here is serving people and engaging them at a higher level so that they'll actually take the amazing information that you teach and implement it.
Yep. So a couple questions.
Sorry. Don't treat it as a webinar.
Well, yeah. Sorry. Yes. So sorry. I was looking in the chat, and there were a couple of questions that I'm going to answer. So, but before that, don't treat it like a webinar, right? That's what most people are getting wrong. They're treating it like a webinar, like Barry said, that they essentially extend over 3 days, and that is not the way to do it because the reality is virtual events are actually live events.
Yeah, that is like a platform that we are singing from the rooftop. I mean, they're both live events. One's in person, one's virtual. So don't think of your virtual event as some rare breed or some, webinar on steroids. Think of it as a live event. What are the things that you love at your in-person live event or that you've seen at in-person live events that you love, and how can you virtualize them? Thinking of some of the things that we've taught tonight, everything from the recordings, the swag, the registration process, the funification, like what are the things that you can implement that with your audience that would get them to register, get them to show up, and get them to stay with you for 3 days. It does come down to content, connection, and community, and that's best delivered when you treat it like a live event and not like a 90-minute webinar that goes on for 3 days.
So regardless of whether or not you join us for the virtual event on virtual events, which I hope you do, regardless of whether or not you do, if you are going to host your own virtual event, which again, I hope you do, make sure that you come at it like a live event, not like a virtual event, because that'll make all the difference in your attendees' experience and how they see it, and also how you treat it, right? If you would normally try and have lunch with them at a certain time, try and have lunch with them at that same time.
Yeah, we're doing VIP meals, VIP reception, sponsorship, coaching zones, guest speakers, panels, speaking contest. The list goes on and on. Things that we love at our in-person events, we've been virtualizing, and again, they're working just as well, and in some cases better, with just a few simple tweaks, which we'll be talking about at the virtual event on virtual events. I saw a question about hours. The hours, we do shift hours slightly. So again, a teaching point here. This is true of the virtual event on virtual events, but also something we're doing with our client events, which is 11 to 7 Eastern. We feel like that's kind of the window, right? You can't have it be a super long day and have people stick with you. And you do have to take different time zones into consideration. So we've been testing different models here. The sweet spot seems to be 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern, and that's exactly what the hours will be for the virtual event on virtual events.
Exactly. A couple of other questions. Julie asked, will the event address how to secure sponsors for the virtual event and also talk about sponsor benefits? The answer is yes.
And that's Julie Fleming. Hey, Julie Fleming.
Julie Fleming.
I haven't seen you in ages. It's good to see you. But yes, absolutely. That's one of the ways that you're going to pay for the event. So on day 2, when we talk about revenue generation under virtualizing, we are going to talk about all the different ways. There's 7 ways that are our favorite. One of them is sponsorship. And we'll talk about how you can make those sponsorships really work in a virtual world. It's not as simple as just saying you're going to have a digital booth and, some like cartoony booth. It's about creating interaction between the attendees and the sponsors where both get real value. So not about sales, about service. And we have raving fans for sponsors. From the sponsors, because they're getting a deeper interaction with the attendees than they've ever gotten at, you guessed it, an in-person event. So yes, we'll be covering that.
Let's see. Barbie Howard asked, how can your friends get this deal? Just share the link with them.
Yep,
Go
absolutely.
to pbsage.com/TVE. That price is available, so says Barry, until Friday. So make sure that you do that soon. Another question, Francis asked, why aren't we talking about OBS at all? So I'm going to tell you why we're not talking about OBS on this particular call. And for those of you that don't know what OBS is, it's a piece of software that allows you to take multiple cameras and switch those cameras so that you have a more dynamic video, much like the one that we had tonight, with where we're switching between slides and camera and the roaming camera and so on and so forth. We're not talking about OBS right now because OBS tends to be a little bit more technical, and it's an awesome solution, and it's open source, which means it's pretty much free. But it tends to be a little bit of a stumbling block for some. And the reality is the latest versions of Zoom don't like OBS all that much. So something to think about if you're looking at OBS, because you do have a virtual camera output. One of the things we'll be talking about is
some of the tech missteps. Either getting too technical, which can be a tripping hazard essentially, or using something that may not interface well with the platform, which can create problems during the stream.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say, Shade asked, I purchased yesterday, how do I get the 2 bonuses? I've got good news for you, Shade.
Yes.
You get the 2 bonuses.
Anyone who's purchased up to this point is guaranteed those 2 bonuses. So no action required on your part.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you.
For sure. Betsy asked, will we cover how to get people to show up? And what we should use for marketing? Yes.
Yeah.
We have a whole session that's dedicated to marketing. Right now it's one full session where we're going to cover our 7 favorite points for how to market virtual events and what's working really, really well for us and for our clients. So that is a big part of what we're going to use or talk about. Another question about, could you use a TriCaster? Sure. Again, there are 100 different ways to get video into Zoom, and a TriCaster can definitely is one of them. Another question about, let's see, another question about schedule. I know Barry addressed that, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 8 p.m. at the latest.
You'll also get a confirmation next week that will have all the details on the hours, and there'll be reminders in your swag box.
Yep. Miscellaneous. Welcome, Miscellaneous, said that this has been most informative. Thank you for what you're sharing and what we've experienced so far. So I want to say thank you. Really appreciate that. I hope you found this information valuable.
Oh, I love that question from Trey. How are you handling meals? That's an interesting one. I mean, probably one of my least favorite parts of a virtual event experience is that we can't buy the attendees meals. And we have dabbled with the thought of providing them meal cards or giving them DoorDash certificates. It gets complicated though, especially if you're going to have an international audience, finding something that works. And at the end of the day, it's honestly easier when they're at home for them to make their own meals. So we do still have lunches. We have welcome lunches. We have VIP lunches. We do still have receptions. And we promote in advance, these are the hours, these are the break times. Please be prepared to hydrate, caffeinate, have food and snacks ready. And we just have them BYOL, bring your own lunch.
Yeah.
BYOC, bring your own cocktail.
JC said BYOM, bring your own meal. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it is that. And they don't mind. And the other thing we've told them is leave your cameras on while you're making your meal. We're all breaking bread together. It's fine. Don't miss a minute of this because you're worried because you're in your kitchen making a sandwich. We'd rather have you with us. But promoting the hours in advance, making sure they're prepared and they know, and inviting them to bring that food with them. We're going to be having lunch together. Bring your lunch. And we're going to do Q&A, for example. It's worked really, really well.
Exactly. Cheryl asks, can virtual work for fundraisers? Because they work for a nonprofit. She works for a nonprofit.
Yes.
And their main way to raise money for the nonprofit is a live event through a fundraiser, and that's been canceled. Is this a way to do fundraising?
Yeah, I think it is. I know that there are people already doing that. We haven't actually run a fundraiser in this environment, but for sure we know people who are. And we do have clients. I actually came from the nonprofit space before I got into the information marketing space. I spent, a lot of time on the nonprofit side working for a trade association. We have trade associations as clients today, and they are still working. working. In fact, we hosted an event last night for a trade association. And while it wasn't direct fundraising, ultimately what the trade association is selling is membership. I mean, they're not making a direct high-ticket offer at their meeting, but for those of you who might be involved with a trade association or membership organization, what you're ultimately selling really is connectivity and community. And if you host your annual event and they come and they have an amazing time virtualized, they're so much more likely to pay those membership dues at the end of the year whenever that comes up for them. So absolutely, everything we're teaching is going to work there as well.
Exactly. Let's see. Helen said in response, I think probably to Cheryl, which is that she's also in the nonprofit sector, and they're thinking about a gala, and that this could also work for that. With just
dance parties, DJs. You know, think about, you might check out too what some of the fundraisers have done on television with, you know, stars. I mean, everything from comedians to actors to musicians who are fundraising for COVID-19 or for the frontline healthcare workers. You've seen several examples of that recently. They're available online, and much of what we're teaching and talking about, you'll see applied there. If you actually look at them and watch what we've talked about tonight, very similar strategies.
Exactly.
I don't think they're sending swag like we are. They probably should, though.
Our swag is better.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sandy says this has been great, and she looks forward to the virtual event. Sandy, we are looking forward to having you with us. Thank you very much. Arcana is asking, is there an email address to send questions about the live event? Yes. events@poweredbysage.com. events@poweredbysage.com. I'll throw that in the chat, and either myself or a member of my team or Barry will respond. We actually have a good amount of emails that we have to respond to, so we'll take some time and get that done tonight. How would we logistically scale in-person check-in for a 500-person plus event? Sean, that's a great question. We're doing an in-person check-in this week for 2,000 plus people. We did it for 3,000 plus people a couple of weeks ago.
We will be talking about that.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely some issues with scaling to that size. And you do really want to think through how to make it seamless for the attendee and for the team, how to build in the right amount of time, how to have the right amount of team, what are the ratios of attendees to team. We will be chatting about that during the virtual event on virtual events.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Shade says thank you for making sure that she gets the bonuses. You're welcome, Shade. Let's see. Will your event be on your website or Zoom? The event is actually, so there's a website that is the portal or the dashboard where all the information comes in. This is how we're going to run it. You'll see it. The second part of it is what platform it'll be on, which is Zoom. So you go to the portal to get your link to access your Zoom, your updates, any downloads that we have, new information, photos, stuff like that that we've shared.
Yeah, and by the way, we haven't promoted this as a benefit, but I do think it is one, which is if you're thinking about hosting your own virtual event, one of the best ways to think through it is to be an attendee experiencing one. So all the things we're going to teach you, you're also going to experience. You get to see it, you get to learn about it, but you also get to experience from the attendee perspective, so you can really think about what works for you, what is appropriate for your culture and your brand, and how you might tweak it and change it for your own virtual event.
Exactly. Joe asks, I'm sorry to ask again, and no worries, keep asking. Will your event be all day from 11 to 7 p.m.? So that's a good question, because it isn't. We're not going to go straight for 8 hours.
Yes. Morning breaks, afternoon breaks, lunch break.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mid-morning break is going to be about 20 to 30 minutes. A lunch break, which will probably be about 75 minutes.
Or an hour.
And we're still talking about that one.
60 to 75 minutes, depending on what we do.
And then an afternoon break, that is another 30 minutes or so. So plenty of time to not just be sitting behind a computer the entire time, because we recognize...
We encourage you not to do that. Like during the breaks, we want you to get up, stretch your legs, walk around, get a breath of fresh air, check on the kids, check on the dog, whatever you need to do, so that you can be really focused and present during the content sessions.
Exactly. Satina asks, I can't get in on the link. It's not coming up in Google. Don't Google the link. Actually use the address bar, pbsage.com/TVE. You're right, it won't come up if you Google it. I haven't figured out how to make that happen.
If you know how to make that happen, send us a note.
Exactly. Do Australian attendees receive a sweat box too? First off, swag box.
That's funny. But our goal is yes. And if you register by this Friday, yes. If it's after this Friday, no.
Maybe not.
Yeah, it'll be challenged. You'll get it, but not in time for the event. So,
Exactly.
yes.
How do you split Zoom user windows in different TVs like your setup? Frank, there's a lot that goes into that. One of the things that we're going to be talking about at the virtual event on virtual events is how to actually have, at scale, we're going to do a part of what we're doing here from a tech perspective. So we're going to give you a behind the scenes look of what we've got going on. Is there going to be a video replay of this video, Toto? Yes, there is. We are going to be putting it out later on, probably tomorrow morning. Really appreciate you sharing what you know. Great information from Carrie. Thank you very much. Betsy says, will you guys be talking about marketing and how to get people in the room?
Yes. Yes, we will.
Awesome.
Day 2, under virtualize. You got it. We certainly will.
Yep. Do you guys address business to consumer events like consumer shows, home and garden shows, car shows, etc.? So Barbie, I think the reality is a lot of these strategies can work for that. Our primary model and what we taught a little bit on tonight, what we're definitely going to be focusing on at the virtual event on virtual events is for speakers, authors, consultants, entrepreneurs, influencers, people who have a small and possibly growing audience all the way up to big audience, and they have a thing that they know and they want to teach that thing to those people.
So whether it's a membership site, whether it's a trade association, a course, a coaching program, a mastermind group, that really is our wheelhouse. So I don't want to mislead you. Our specialty isn't those large consumer shows. I do think some of what we're teaching will apply there, but it's not directly targeted to that.
Exactly. Let's see. Bonnie is in Australia. So Bonnie, here's what I want you to think about.
Yes.
If you were coming to a live event in the United States, and we have clients that come to live events here in the United States all the time from Australia, it requires like a, 7-day flight, right? And then
getting in early and jet lag and all that good stuff.
Exactly. And then your time zones, it depends. We're working with a developer right now. Grant, if you're watching, how's it going?
Yeah.
And he is, I believe it's 14 and a half hours or 13 and a half hours ahead of us. So really, he knows what's happening tomorrow already. But if he comes, there's some significant jet lag. So while you may have to stay up for odd hours, you don't have to get on a flight. You don't have to book a hotel room. You don't have to be away from your family and kids for 3 days, or if you're coming from Australia, like 6, 7, because of all of the time zone issues. And, it's a fraction of the cost for you, virtual events. That's not just our virtual event, any virtual events. It's also part of the reason why virtual events are bringing larger audiences than in-person events, because the barrier to entry is a little bit lower.
Yeah, and that was the long answer. I mean, the short answer is we ward over the schedule. It is tough with all the different time zones. The amazing thing with a virtual event is a global reach, and the hard thing is a global reach. So I get that the hours aren't perfect for you, but to Blue's point, the little bit of finagling of your schedule, hopefully you can make it with us. And the great news is no jet lag, no plane flights. That helps a lot, both with cost and with time. Not nearly as much time away, so hopefully you can make that up in the sleep time. Also, for those of you who register, you'll see some, upgrade opportunities as well, and one of those does include recordings that would come out 30 days after the event.
Yeah. Helen says that she can't believe this is actually live because it seemed recorded for so long. I think that's probably because Helen thinks we just did such a good job.
Thank you, Helen. We do have some pretty awesome tech here making this happen.
Yeah. And Trey says, full disclosure, I came in as a skeptic, but leaving as a believer. Love that. Signed up for the virtual event. Thank you. You're welcome.
Converted believer. I love that.
Exactly. Angie says, Angie, love this. You're signing up. It's going to be 1 o'clock in the morning.
And by the way, Angie, you won't be alone. I know for a fact there are other Aussies that have already signed up, so you'll be in good company. You guys can have like a little caffeine party together.
Yeah, exactly. Satina, the answer to your question is additional. I'm being cryptic for those of you who haven't figured that out. Let's see. Bonnie says true. Thanks, Blue.
Yeah, and I saw
You're
that
welcome.
our friend from the consumer shows is signing up anyway. Yeah, I think a good amount of what we teach is going to really be supportive. And at this price point, you really can't lose. But certainly some of the things about registration and sign up and show up and tickets and just how to think about virtualizing experiences. I think one of the most fun things about the time we live in right now is there's so much innovation. I have not seen this much innovation in the events industry. I mean, I started in 1991. I hate to even admit that. It's been a long time. We haven't seen anything like this. So it is really an incredible time. And, you know, if nothing else, it seeds as kernels of inspiration that you can use to actually make your events better. And that's true for any of you, gala, fundraisers, nonprofits. Our specialty is 1 and 3 day events for enrollment. But at the end of the day, what we really specialize is creating amazing experiences where we put hosts and attendees together for content, community, and connection. So if that's what you're really trying to do from a service-based perspective, I know you'll find some great value here. So super excited to see you.
For sure. And then let's see, is there somewhere where we can find out everything TVE will include and cover?
Yes.
Miss Norman, so is there, Mary?
Yes.
Well, so first off,
I can't wait to hear you're going to answer this.
I'm
Are you
going to
throw me under the bus?
No, I'm not. I'm going to, of course not. Why would I do that? You're my wife and I love you. Oh, scratch my back. So what I would say to you is the website that is listed, the pbsage.com/TVE. If you add the letters to the end of that, VID, right? So TVE, VID. I know, lots of little acronyms.
Yes.
But if you go there, we did a broadcast a couple days ago, and I took the 12 minutes or so where we spoke about the live event, and I put that at the top of that particular page. So if you go to pbsage.com/TVEVID, again, I'm sorry, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll put it in the chat, and we'll answer Kathleen's question. But yeah, you can find that there. And, you know, honestly, we have been hustling to put 3 virtual events on in the last 45 days and create this one for you guys so that we could get this information to you really quickly. We've got, and you know, I have to tell you, I probably could have built out a website instead of been building out your swag box. I love swag, and I've spent a considerable number of hours on that this week. Probably should have put it into designing a website, but again, I'm thinking more about serving you than I have been about selling you. So one of the things that we know we have to get done is little detailed, you know, bullets on strategize, virtualize, and actualize, and know that that'll be coming by the end of the weekend. But don't keep that from joining us. Like, you know, from what you've heard tonight, what you're going to see on the video, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. It'll be an action-packed 3 days.
For sure.
What was Kathleen's question?
Well, let's get back to Kathleen's question, but before I do, JD said, say my name. So, JD, do you want to say it?
Yeah, is it JD Cunningham or just
I don't
JD?
think I think it's JD Cunningham.
Okay.
Cunningham. Just
JD.
JD. What's up, JD? How you doing, buddy? Okay, so Kathleen asked, sorry for asking again. I'm hoping you can answer. Do these work for Facebook Live shopping events? For example, Shop the Gallery. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I've not done that type of an event. I've not seen that type of an event. But what I will tell you is the events that we're talking about, if I'm going to guess, okay? So this is a dangerous moment for me. Kathleen, thank you for asking the question again, so we answered it. But if Facebook relies on Facebook Live for their Facebook shopping events, that's not the type of event that we're talking about, because again, that's a one-way broadcast.
Right.
What we're talking about is a 1, 2, or 3 day, multi-day event where you create connection and community through the power of Zoom, through the power of interactivity, connection, community, talking with each other, networking breaks, sponsorships, all the sorts of things that you get from an in-person
It's so interesting.
live
I
event.
want to like have a consult call with you to understand more. But you know, at the end of the day, if you're looking at all of what Blue's saying is, if all of your interaction is going out to the audience without kind of going back and forth, this is probably less helpful, because we're big believers in creating the interaction that is the back and forth. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about are ways to increase the interaction with the host and the attendees with each other and with sponsors and with speakers. So what Pete Vargas would call 360 degrees of interactivity. When we put his event together a couple weeks ago, that was our big focus, because for our host and for us as a brand and a business, we're always looking at how we enhance creativity and engagement and interactivity between host and audience and each other, and the other groups that are involved. So long answer to a short question. Not sure if that helped or not, but at $97, it's worth a gamble.
There is something to that. All right. So, and then somebody just posted that they tried the pbsage.com/TVE and that it didn't work. Let me just double check to see if I gave you the wrong link.
Is that maybe the Google thing, for example?
Maybe. You know what? It's TVEV. It's just V. It's not VID. It's TVEV.
Oh, got it. That's what leads to the video, you mean?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you looking for a little video short on everything that the event includes, it's www.pbsage.com/TVEV as in video, V.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Exactly. I gotta remember these things. Bonnie says, JD, this is really live.
Is that why he wanted us to say his name?
JD says, now, okay, now I'm a believer. Love that. Yeah, Dana, sorry about that. Wrong link. TVEV. Ignore the ID.
Yes.
Apparently my ID is a little bit low.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, I think that's it for now. I want to close. For me, I want to close with this and say, I hope that you take the 3 days and spend them with us March 29th through the 31st for the virtual event on virtual events. We have an amazing 3 days lined up for you. First day, once again, is on strategize. Day 2 is all about virtualize, and day 3 is about actualize. And I think that by the end of those 3 days, you're going to be able to walk away with a plan for your 3-day event, a plan to fill it, a plan to sell it, and a plan to deliver it in a highly interactive fashion that allows you to serve your audience at an incredibly high level. And do it in a short period of time, because the beautiful thing about virtual events is it doesn't take like a 6-month runway like most live events do, or even longer. You can literally
put this to work for yourself by the end of June, if not before. So that's one of the most exciting components of a virtual event. I'm seeing a few of you still having issues with the link.
Nope. Dana said it's working.
Dana got in? Okay, great. Yep. If you're having an issue with the link, don't hesitate to stick around. We will too for a few minutes. You can also email us events@poweredbysage.com. That's powered, POWERED, by BY, Sage, SAGE.com. We've got a team there to support you. For those trying the 800 number, yes, there's no one there tonight. Our offices are closed, so that's why you're not getting an answer there. So yeah, you can put something in the chat. We'll stick around for a few minutes, or you can try that email address. And in closing, I just want to end by serving you. You know, this last message that I want to give you is just how possible I think this is. At Sage, one of the things we often say is you can do this. And it's because for 16 years, we've been helping speakers, authors, and influencers host live events. Some of them for 45 people, 150 people, 400 people, 500 people, and yes, 5,000 plus people. But what I most love about the live event platform is its ability to truly transform an industry. Whatever your industry is, whatever space you're in, you know, like we have everything from dog trainers to dressmakers to restaurateurs to, you know, personal development, business development. You know, Tony Robbins hosts live events, and so do a million other people, right? It's such an amazing platform for transformation. So whether you're a name that everybody knows or the next best undiscovered secret, one of the great things about live events is that you can harness the power of this platform for you. The other great thing is that 80% of what works in person also works in virtual. So the great news is when you're thinking of pivoting, and I think that's the whole name of the game right now, we don't know how long COVID's gonna last. We don't know how long people will be doing virtual events. We don't know when in-person events are coming back. We don't know if they're gonna be hybridized. This is all very new. But the great news is 80% of it is exactly the same. And the 20%, the tech and the touch that are different, are easily mastered. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines, I just want you to hear that the world needs you. Your tribe needs you. They're looking for leadership, they're looking for content, they're looking for connection, they're looking for community, and that's exactly where you come in. So whether you work with us, whether you come to the live event, or whether you do this on your own, we champion you just to get out there and do it. The world does need you. Your tribe needs you right now. And there's never been a better time. It's an unprecedented time. You can make an unprecedented offer with an unprecedented opportunity. Audiences are incredibly forgiving, and you can use to fill your event and to support your event and to sell anyone in your event that it's an unprecedented time. You're giving them an unprecedented opportunity. Like, that's exactly the opportunity that's at your doorstep right now. You can beta test virtually anything and say, I may never do this again. You may, you may not. But the power of that you can reinvent yourself, press a reset button, and literally have this done within the next 30 days. There's never been anything like that before. It truly is unprecedented. So if not you, who? If not now, when? If you're a speaker, author, influencer, if you're a trade association, if you're somewhere out there with a passion for supporting the tribe that needs you with your specific messaging, your content, and your ability to create an amazing community, this is your time. And we want you to know you can do this.
Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. Bye for now.